Bird. Get him. Yeah! Ron Babe was right.
I'm feeling spry. Hey everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. It is November the 3rd. Well, October's gone, but not the memory of it. I just got back from North Dakota. I think I left on the 22nd and got back home on the 2nd of November. It was a nice trip. I had plenty of time to relax, hunt, rinse, repeat. It was a ball. It was an absolute ball, and that's what I'm going to tell you about today. I did not schedule a guest, and I don't often do, a solo podcast. If you've been a long-time listener, you know it's almost always with a guest. I think I did, one time years ago when we had a litter of puppies whelping, and I was packing for a trip. I think I did a solo one. I just don't normally do it because I'm such a chatty Cathy. I can't help talking to people. This is obviously why I do the podcast. But, it was such a relaxing trip, and I was with some really good friends. It just didn't feel like I should take out the recording equipment. It just was I'll explain it to you. But let's get on with let's get on with the show, as they say. Let's lock the gates, okay? So my Patreon patrons, I love you all so much. You are my biggest sponsor, my longest sponsor. And so Patreon patrons, they get discounts on some of my sponsors' products. Now, not all of them. Some of them are dictated by MSRP, and there's nothing we can do about it. But if you're a patron, you get notices of discounts on things like Pike Gear, Onyx, Waltons, Gunner Kennels, Canine Athlete, coming up soon, maybe something with deck drawer system. So it's worth it, but I think the Zoom rooms are my favorite. In fact, I'm going to start this. Well, first of all, we got to get through that. Okay, patrons. All right, Pike Gear. I wore my Pike vest. I didn't hunt a lot. I know it sounds funny. I was on a hunting trip. I didn't hunt a lot. I can tell you, I did not fill my Pike vest with birds. But I also rocked the pants. My favorite for that trip, this windy-ass North Dakota, was my Tongass top with a little zipper pocket, and it cut the wind. It's got orange sleeves. It was like the perfect outer layer for that week in North Dakota. I think one time I put on my little puffy sweater, my little, you know what I mean, something over it, and then the vest, because it was just that kind of weather. It was not bad, but that damn place blows. I don't know if North Dakota is where they make the wind or where it's first delivered to the rest of the country. Somebody should have thought of that before they did the Homestead Act. They could have gave it a different name. But anyway, the Tongass top was unbelievable. My Onyx maps were invaluable. I had a friend of mine. He started marking every bird he saw on Onyx, and then he was driving around looking for ducks, and I'm going back looking at his spots, and it was that simple. It's like, mark it, share it, hunt it. So maybe that's the new tagline for Onyx. Mark it, share it, hunt it. Yeah. Had my CZ shotgun out there. I also had my old AYA that I got for my 50th birthday. So I try to show both of them a little love, and neither one of them killed a lot of birds, but that's part of the story of this podcast. Check out CZ's lineup. I know they're hard to find. I get people writing me all the time. I can't get it. My gun shop says no. Can you help me? I really can't. I don't have that much clout at CZ to say, get Bobby 12 gauge here, his Upland Special. I don't have that much clout. But, they've got every gun imaginable that you could use in a price point of quality that meets, exactly what you need. And then later, when you're like 50 years old, like when I got my AYA, you can get that too. Start out with the CZ. I would. I mean, I didn't back in the day, but I did. 2005 is my oldest one, and that is probably still my favorite CZ. It's a side-by-side ring neck, and you're like, no, they don't make that. Oh, yeah, they did. Ring neck was an over-under, but there was a side-by-side. And that is probably my favorite one. It really is. Because it's got really nice wood and its side plate. It's pretty. It's really pretty. My friends at Boss Shot Shells sent me out there for duck and for partridge. Well, we call grouse partridge, But you got Hungarian partridge and you got sharp-tailed grouse. So I spread the love. I gave my waterfowl neighbors and his son a whole bunch of 3.5s, which worked unbelievable. And I don't mean that just like, this is not embellishment. I saw a Hunter's 20 years old. I saw Hunter take a bird out of the sky. We were trying to do a sneak up on a pond. When we got there was quite a few ducks. I wouldn't say flight ducks, but he snuck down around this one side of this pond, and then he stopped. And I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? You want me to move? So I thought, he must want me to move. So I had Bravo with me just for a possible recovery, and we snuck around the pond. And I'll be, God dang, I saw him raise his barrel, and I'm like, no, Hunter, it's too far away. And he dropped I think the first one was a teal. I was like, I watched it fall out of the sky and hit this mud flat, and like, that's not possible. Well, it is. It is with Boss Shot Shells. Everything's non-tox. We didn't have to change up from WMAs to private land. That's the way to go. Walton's, we brought the spices. We had everything. Well, Walton's got everything but the meat, so you got to get the meat. But once you get the meat, get Walton's. Go to their catalog. Their spices are second to none. Their equipment, their grinders, their stuffers. I wish I could have brought my whole Walton's kitchen out there, because the place we stayed was truly probably out of all the trips, and I've been traveling. I did a few little notes here for once, because this intro is pretty much the podcast, except I'll go into some stories. But this place we stayed in was, out of all the places I've stayed over all the years, and I think it was 1992 or 3 when I made my first trip to South Dakota, we had the best place to stay. I mean, location, comfort, kitchen, it was fantastic. Anyway, more on that later. More on that later. I wish I could have brought my Walton's kitchen there, but I didn't, because there was a kitchen. Of course, I bought my Purina Pro Plan for the dogs. That goes without saying. I don't go anywhere without it. And of course, it was stored in a Gunner food crate, which for me, I keep that Gunner food crate right in the truck with my measuring cup and my water. And I open the side of my what do you call it? The cap. And I got like a tool cap, so it's got like 3 doors that you pick up. And I never had to take it out of the truck. It sat right up there by the front, and it's there's no two ways about it. And my Gunner kennel, hauled Taffy out there. Taffy rides in the truck, but she rides in the Gunner kennel. Those are made for life. Food crates, kennels, and more to come this year. You'll be hearing about it soon. You will. Garmin, absolutely. Well, it's the best in canine training and navigation there is. One word, Garmin. That's it. I cannot tell you enough how much I like looking at my watch, my Instinct watch, and seeing where my dogs are without pulling out my navigator. Now, I hunted with some friends this week. A couple of them in particular, I saw them looking at their navigation system all the time, trying to look for their dog. Like, you don't need to do that. You can hook up the Instinct watch to any of the Garmin tracking collars and receivers, whether it's the 550 Plus, the Astros, the Alphas, the new ones, just get the Instinct watch and sync it up. It makes hunting a pleasure. It does. My dogs were running on Canine Athlete. I add the hydrate and recover to their water. Of course, Bravo's been on a new dog. And I'll tell you what, I saw a little old dog come out there, meaning, he's getting old. I keep saying he's 11. He might be 12. He's old. He lost all of his orange. He's still got his pep in his step, but he really ain't running anymore. But more about him later. I think I should have cut him back on his new dog before the trip, because all of a sudden, on one particular hunt, he started acting like a puppy dog. Yeah, he was he got a little out of control. W Hunting Supply, that Jason and Buddy are unbelievable. I've already directed I don't know how many people over to them just for help and they are even if these are a few people that I know personally or they're patrons, and I just copy them on an email to Jason or Buddy, and they always get a hold of these people. That is why W Hunting Supply, that's what they're known for. Besides, they sell more Garmin collars than than what did Forrest Gump say? He got more. They got more. What did he say about that? Got more money than Davy Crockett or something like that. Anyway, who cares? That's a complete rabbit hole. You'd have to like the movie Forrest Gump to know it. Anyway, W Hunting Supply knows more about training collars, selling training collars. You know what? Don't go anywhere else. You can look at all their stuff, but when it comes to electronics, you talk to those guys. You write them an email. You make your next Garmin purchase through W. I would. I'm going. Well, they're a sponsor, of course. I'm going to. And little announcement. You heard me last week mention Decked. Deck gave me the green light to say yes. We're going to start sponsoring the podcast. And story behind that is I've had the Deck drawer system for 14 months, I think, maybe 15 months. And there was a little change of administration. They wanted me to have one to do some Instagram and kick the wheels and check the air pressure. I put it together. It's been in my truck, like I said, since I put it in, and I've never seen anything built this strong. When I come to strong, I don't mean a gunner kennel. You could also. I'm not sure if the deck drawer system could take a 12-gauge shotgun slug or not. I don't, or number 9 shot or what. I don't know what it could take when it comes to like accidentally shooting your deck drawer system. But what I do know is I live on a gravel road, washboard on the way out, washboard on the way in. When I go to the Dakotas, you're on gravel roads all day long. 15 months I've had this thing in the box. I think it is 15 months now. I've had this deck drawer system in here. There is not a loose bolt to be found. The drawers, if you don't know what I'm looking at, just look at deck drawer system. You see them just about, well, not everywhere. They've been in the building trades forever. Your life will change, especially if you're not just a once-a-year hunter. Like if you do some dog training during the year, you do some traveling. I'm a junk drawer guy, okay? Drives my wife crazy. I've got 2 different drawers in the house, one in my desk and one in the kitchen. That it's just my junk drawer. I do treat one of my deck drawers like a junk drawer. Like I got something. No, I'm not going to put it in the door handle. I'm not going to put it in the door pocket. It's going in the deck drawer. And on the right side, I'm kind of organized. I got my shotguns, vest, whistles, gloves I need, things that I got to grab all the time. Anyway, check them out. We are hopefully, well, I won't say. Anyway, let's just stick with that for right now. And Shooting Sportsman Magazine is the place. It's birds, dogs, people, guns, and places. And lastly, but never leastly, the Upland Institute, okay? Be a better trainer. Check out the Upland Institute. Be a better trainer. That's all. That's it. So this trip, all right, every year, like basically every year. No, it's not basically every year. Basically every year I take 2 or 3 or 4 trips. But I think a couple years I actually passed on the Dakotas, and I think one year I went to Wyoming, another year I went to Montana, but I still hunted South Dakota on the way back. But my love for the Dakotas, I live in the woods in Michigan. So, people who know me or Zoom room attendees, we all know where we live because, we talk so much about it. But not everybody knows. I'm sure not every listener knows that I live in the mitten of Michigan, about 2 hours north of the Indiana line at the start of bird country. And I absolutely would never live anywhere else but Michigan. But when I travel, I want to see the horizon. I want to see the prairie. I want to see the fields. That's what I love about the Dakotas. The Dakotas, there's just a feeling of vastness to it. But there's also a feeling of let's say you had 100 square miles of woods with mixed habitat. You could pretty much walk through that in Michigan and probably find a grouse and a woodcock. You look at the Dakotas, you could be looking at 6 square miles of cattle pasture. It may not have a thing on it, not a bird on it. Now, could, but it's the I guess it's the horizons, and sunrises and sunsets can be pretty too. Now you heard me in the intro. I think they make wind and not. I didn't say break wind. I think they make wind in Montana, and they start sending it out to the rest of the country through North Dakota. I don't know why. There's probably some, what do they call the weatherman? Astro. You know what I'm saying. No, not an astronomer. Who said that? Of course not. A weather person. There's got to be a weather reason for this, but it never changes. I mean, you don't get a day out there where that wind doesn't blow somewhere, at least when I'm on vacation. That's what I call my hunting trips. My hunting trips are vacation, and this one was more of a vacation than anything. I just can't tell you, if you haven't traveled as a wing shooter, you should one day get a trip, put some friends together, DIY it, or go to a lodge. It doesn't matter where you go to. Go to the Dakotas and experience it. They're the same, but they're different. South and North Dakota, they each got their little nuances. I'm telling you what, it's a lot easier to navigate in a lot of South Dakota than it is in North Dakota. There's a lot of sections of roads that just go away and disappear, and you got to go 12 miles around something to get back where you're going. But it is just I love it. I just love it. And till the day they put me in the ground, I will always have the year before I die. Well, that's really dumb. How would I know that? I could die when I'm out there. Anyway, I don't miss the Dakotas, and I never will again. In fact, next year I'm going out for early. I'm going to go out early season next year. Yeah. I'm going to go chase those Charpies and those Huns that gave me the slip this year. I'm going to go chase them when they open. But that wasn't my goal of this trip. It really wasn't. It was one of them to hunt with my best friend. Now, Roof and I have known each other. We try to put the timeline on it. So I'm 64 as of last Friday or Saturday, whenever that was. And I think Roof is a year and a couple months younger than me. So we met somewhere around when I was 5 years old, or I was 6 and he was 5. So that's like pretty stinking close to 60 years. Now, do I remember what we did through third grade, fourth grade? No, of course not. But we were neighbors. We were best friends. We're still best friends. And if I go on a trip with Roof, it's a guaranteed success. It absolutely. Now, his knee is so bad that when he gets out of the truck, he can't straighten his leg out. He didn't go out there to walk in fields. We did a little duck hunting. He did a little walking on one field. But that didn't mean nothing to me. It didn't matter. Having my best friend of all these years there, that made the trip. That made the actual trip. And I won't go into the details of everybody else, but everybody made that trip special. So Matt, Scott, and Hunter, the 5 of us out there, it was, and I'm not just saying this, it was probably right up there with my first trip to North Dakota or South Dakota 30 years ago. It was that fun. It was that fun. And that is, I've had trips where everybody in the party, we get out together, and within 3 days, everybody's an expert on where we should go and what we should do. The 5 of us just were like, yep, I'm going to try this. Okay, I'll see you later. I'm going to try that. Hey, you want to try this tomorrow morning? Yeah, I'll meet you tomorrow morning. I'll go with you. They go out somewhere, go duck hunting. I went somewhere looking for birds. We meet back in the afternoon. We go out at night and go duck hunting. It was so stressless that there's trips where, I don't know if you've ever been on one, where you kind of, not that you're mad at your friends, it's just they feel more work-like. Like, we got to get up, we got to go hunting, we got to get up, we got to go hunting, we got to get up, we got to go home. And there's times I've come home from left a hunting camp going like, man, am I glad to get home. This one could have lasted for a month, and I don't think that feeling would have happened. I do not see it. I will say, you always, most of you hear me bitch about my knee. Now, I need a knee replacement, but it's not critical. So I went to the doc, and I got a cortisone shot in my knee, and I put on this, my wife gave me some cream. It's something with a V. Voltron, something or other. And I'll tell you that, between rubbing that on, putting my knee brace on, and my cortisone shot, I was feeling pretty spry. I was also feeling pretty rubber-legged because I made the mistake of retiring, a year and a half ago. Sometimes my watch yells at me and says, "Hey, dummy, get off your seat. You haven't walked 20 steps today." I paid the price for that. I got some rubber legs out there. But the knee held up enough to hunt. I just don't know if I held up enough to hunt. And so I took Bravo, Taffy, Zara, and Itty with me. Now, the new pup stayed back with the Hardy Hunters. And I'm going to go there tonight and pick them up. But I got a feeling they might be trying to pull a switcheroo on me. I hope it's the same dog that I had them pick up and watch for me. And that's another thing. You make hunting friends, and somebody will say, "Yeah, I'll watch your dog for you." And you know that, like, oh, great. He wasn't little. Well, he's got 3 names now. His given call name is Nick. My wife calls him Rufus. And now we call him Tagus. So he might be Rufus of Tagus. Okay? I like that name, Tagus. There's a story behind it. You may not hear about it on this episode. Anyway, I took old Bravo out. And the reason I did that was once I knew that Heather and Trent could watch Tagus. We're just going to go with Tagus now. I don't know why. I was like, okay, I can't just leave Bravo in the kennel. He really can't hunt anymore. He's got it. I mean, his nose still works. He still points. He still retrieves. But he's old, and he's a big dog. He was 80 pounds when he was in shape. He's probably closer to 90 now. And, I cut his – it's funny. I cut his food back before the trip, and I probably got about 5 pounds off of him. I didn't bother to exercise or cut the food off of my diet before the trip. So I think he felt better than me. But he rode shotgun in the back seat with Taffy in her crate. Taffy got a ton of exercise out there. Got into some situations where we almost got a bird with her. But I'll tell you, I did not shoot a bird over Taffy. But that's okay. This trip was not about. There was no expectations. There was always those little like, oh, I wonder if we're going to get some this today. I wonder if this is going to happen. Well, it doesn't always happen. But when the trip and the friends are right and the place is right, honest to God, it didn't matter to me at all. But she got a lot of field work. Bravo got. I was not even planning on taking him out. This place we stayed at has a fenced-in yard with an old doghouse outside, and I thought, I'm just going to leave him in there. He's not going to care. Well, of course, I took him with on a couple hunts and let him do a little bit. But, he's old. He's stiff. He's older and stiffer than me, technically. And look, I'm looking in his kennel right now, and he's what is he doing? It looks like he's I don't know what he's doing. But the other part of this trip that I took was my 2 female Bracos. That's Itty, one I got last year, and Zara, the one I got a couple years before that. And this is completely on me with Zara. Zara has become basically a kennel dog. My buddy Randy takes her out a little bit, did a little work with her. She's got a little something in there. But in the words of, I can't remember who said it, she's a silly goose. I don't know, and I still don't know after this trip what she's going to turn into. But I love her. She's goofy. She's silly. She's spoiled. But I don't. It just didn't click with her. There's a couple times I'm like, are you gonna? Did I give you a heel command? Because you don't know heel very well. Anyway, Zara was not disappointed. I do not have a runaway dog. I have a cooperative dog. I just got a dog that's going to have to get out on some birds this winter, see what she turns into. But Itty, my other Braco, she had a real disconnect when it came to field search. And that even showed up the people who owned her. Hi, Kelly. Hi, Eric. That her field search score and her puppy test was a 1. Okay. Now you would think that means that dog didn't hunt, because you get a 0 through 4. I guess a 0 in field search would be like, I decided not to do the field portion of the test. The judges have to give you a 0. I've given out a few 1s in my day, back in the day. But when I got this dog and I saw its scores, I'm like, a 1? That doesn't seem good. And then I was told that, well, it was a very uncooperative search. I'm like, how? I've seen uncooperative searches. Dale Ray's first Spinoni, uncooperative search. Dog was nowhere near us for basically the entire time. And I don't think it got a 1. So, I mean, I'm not, not second guessing the judges who judge that dog, but certainly as a guy who knows the scoring system, I was concerned. Well, last year I took Eddie to South Dakota, and I saw what they meant. This dog kind of likes to self-hunt, doesn't ever leave the county, but isn't really hunting for me. And I'm like, I'm going to take it. And I saw that last year, and I saw it this year around the kennel, and I saw it when I was out at my training days on Wednesday. I saw little glimmers of what I was looking for, but I saw a lot of what I wasn't looking for was this disconnected hunt. In fact, at one point, we were looking for some sharp tails, and we had not a really long walk, maybe 2-mile walk. And I took her out, got the collar on her so I won't lose her, wasn't expecting anything. And she was always away from me, maybe behind me too much. So I don't mind if a dog's off to the side or in front of me, but behind me doesn't help. I don't want to retrace my footsteps, And then she got into, I refer to as a burrowing owl. I don't know if they're really burrowing owls. It seems like they come right out of the ground though. And Matt's dog started chasing it. Eddie saw that. Matt's dog finally quit chasing it, but not Eddie. That owl sailed into the horizon, and I looked at one point before I lost sight of her on 2 hills. She was 679 yards away from me. And I was like, dog, you're either going to end up back where we started or you're going to come back here, but I'm not chasing you down. And she finally came back, but still proceeded to hunt. At one point, I said, I'm going to have her hearing checked because she did come. I mean, she wasn't gone the whole time, but gone enough to where it was not a helpful hunt. And at one point, she came kind of cruising through me, and I called her name, and she blinked me. Now, if you don't know what blink is when a dog, let's say, had a bad experience with a launcher or a trainer that put too much pressure on it when it was trying to, if the dog wasn't pointing or if the dog wasn't steady. And it happens to especially a lot of people who haven't seen it before. All of a sudden, they're like, I can't believe my dog didn't smell that bird. No, the dog smelled the bird. It's usually got a great nose. It smelled the bird early enough to pretend 100% that it didn't smell the bird. I know some of you may not understand that, but I know a lot of you do. It's called blinking. They pretend that there's nothing there and they're still hunting. Well, twice she came by me and I called her name. And then I blew the whistle and called her name. And I mean, there wasn't even a head nod. There wasn't even I'm not listening to you. No, it was just like, as far as I knew, she had cotton in her ears and she couldn't hear a thing. And I got done with that hunt and I talked to Matt and I said, I'm going to go home and have her hearing checked. I wonder if she ended up with an ear infection that I didn't see, Brocco's ears are always big and dirty and you got to clean them a lot. I said, maybe she got an ear infection that made her deaf. And he even said, he goes, yeah, I'd check it out because, man, we all yell at our dogs sometimes. We'd like to go out and have a quiet day. And I do, when I go hunting, that's no time for me to be correcting. I want to just hunt and enjoy the hunt. But at one point, when she finally got back with that owl, I wanted to give her some water. And she literally blinked me twice. And then when she came in on her own, of course, I gave her water. And I'm like, you're deaf. You're stone deaf. That's how I felt. Later, the next day, I take her out, and I saw a different dog. It was, I don't know if by luck or by just sticking to my guns to say I'm not going to, she had a collar on her neck. I could have gave her a little electricity, but for what? I certainly didn't want to confuse her, and that's what so many people do with a collar. They confuse their dog. She doesn't know tone to come back in on tone or vibrate that I'm aware, well, I shouldn't say that I'm aware of, that I've worked with. I like a dog to be able to hunt with me that I don't need to push a button. I want to look where it's at. I want it to come when it's done hunting. I want it to stay by the truck. I want it to let me put a collar on it. I don't want to squirrely-murly. But, most of our dogs, they just hunt with us. We could go through there. Let's say you had strep throat and you lost your voice. You should be able to hunt with your dog. You shouldn't have to yell at your dog. So anyway, we went looking for some more sharp tails in a spot. And I said, let's just take out Edie by herself. And it was Sharpie country, which is very rolling. So you're going to lose sight of the dog here and there and in valleys and coulees and stuff. And I'm telling you, it was a totally different dog than I saw the day before. Now, I don't know if it's because I didn't do anything to her, and maybe I got her confidence to say, wow, I blinked him, and he didn't even get mad at me. I don't know. That's all speculation. That's completely speculation. But I had this hope because I've seen pieces of her that I love, and I love her field search. I love her gait. She does not consume water anything like an average Bronco, and it makes no sense because she's just as jolly and as heavy boned as Bravo is. Bravo will come up to me even when he was young. He literally stops, comes over, give me water, goes back and hunts. When Bravo comes into me, he makes eye contact, and I give him that green Gatorade bottle. I do. Psh, or it might have been a Pike bottle this time. Psh, squeeze bottle. And so he's a pain in the butt. You in hot weather, you better bring a gallon of water for that dog. He'll keep hunting back in his day. But Edie does not seem to have this thing with water. Even in her kennel, I notice she doesn't drink as much water as the other ones. So anyway, we go out looking for these sharptail, and of course, this time of year, sharptail are not cooperative. They're getting to be in bigger groups. We did come up with some ones and twos a couple times, but in general, we'd get somewhere, and there goes a big old flock of 20. Off and off. If you haven't seen sharptails get off the ground, it's beautiful because it's a covey rise with a little delay. But man, they can soar, and I mean they can get out of town quickly. And you keep thinking, they're going to land, and you look at the horizon, and they're still just flapping them wings every so often, just cruising, and like it is nothing for a Sharpie to fly a mile away, out of sight, especially in that country. But even with some bird contacts and some smell down the ground, Edie, for some reason, just started working for me. She stayed in front. She was left to right. She kind of used me and Matt as her borders, like I'll go out as far as him. I'll go out a little further than him. Yeah, she looped around the back a little bit, but some of that's just terrain. I was like, it made the trip. It's like, okay, I can work with this dog. I've been guilty of, like so many people, you got your one dog you call on for everything, and you get these other dogs, and you don't give them the time that they deserve. Now, if you don't give them the time they deserve, you can't set expectations. So I think I did that right. I did it wrong by not doing enough with her, but I did it right by not setting an expectation. And then I was super pleased when all of a sudden she started hunting like she was my dog. Handles barbed wire good. A lot of dogs don't. But, I mean, she gets it. You pick up the barbed wire, she goes through. She went through on her own a little bit, but she literally slows down. She's just like Bravo. Bravo's crazy. I mean, that dog you could be hunting Bravo. He could be running. In fact, there's a story I could tell you that I was hunting with Tyler Webster years ago, and I made one of my uncommon, wonderful shots. That's an uncommon, but it was a big crosser. If I'm going to hit a bird and impress anybody, it's going to be a bird at 60 yards crossing the horizon, and somehow I think Andy Tubbs showed me how to do that with clay targets, where you lead that bird to the point where you're not even looking at the bird. And I dropped this Sharpie in a pasture, and Bravo went on the retrieve, and I saw him coming that fence, and he's full tilt. And I was just like closing my eyes but squinting like, oh, we're going to the vet. And that dog stopped at that fence, went through the barbed wire, and then continued to run out and get the grouse, come back to the fence, through the fence, and run back to me. So I'm not saying Broncos understand barbed wire, but they're better at it than a lot of dogs. Anyway, so I saw a lot of things in her. That was one of the things that made the trip a success. We actually hunted her on some tree rows another day, and I wasn't sure if it would be huns. It was just definitely where we were hunting could be in this particular spot could be anything: hun, pheasant, sharptail. They're all around in the area, and happened to be my first good miss. I always have one classic miss on a hunting trip, and it's always on a pheasant. And I know if you're listening to this, I know a few of you have heard this story so many times. You give me a layup shot like that it doesn't come that often, okay? Bird gets up between me and the tree row, flies out across a cut field, going to the next tree row, or maybe the tree row after, has trouble getting out of the tree row, makes all kinds of noise. It's right in front of your face. You're looking at it. You can see its feet curled up under its chest. I mean, I could see the details. I mean, if that bird had a leg band on it, I would have seen it. Of course, they don't leg band pheasants, but I'm telling you, that's how close this was, and almost in a surreal, slow motion kind of a, like, there it goes, pick the gun. It was like slow motion in my head. And I like, all right, I got to give this bird a 3 count because, I do not want to cut this bird in half. I mean, this bird is right. I mean, had I been like a ninja, and my shotgun barrel was maybe 5 foot long instead of 29 inches, I would have just put the barrel up in the air and hit the bird, knocked it down. That's how close it was to my face, to my body, and I let it go off to the side. I'm a lefty shooter. It went to my right. That's the natural side for a lefty shooter, right? You're not coming out of the pocket. You're not twisting against your hip. So for a lefty shooter, a right-hand side shot, in fact, if you just adjust your feet a little bit, it's basically a straightaway. And who misses a straightaway? yeah, I did. And then when you pull the trigger and you see nothing come off that bird, this unbelievable sense of dread comes across you, like you missed that bird. Like a minute's worth of thoughts goes through your head in a millisecond. And then I reach for the other trigger. This was my old AYA that I got for my 50th, 16 gauge. I reached for that back trigger with all the confidence in the world, said, okay. And the same exact results. There wasn't even one of them things where the bird, like pheasants especially, everybody knows they're my favorite bird to hunt. And sometimes you see that bird go, oomph, ooh, you hit it with something. Maybe you hit it in the ass, maybe you hit it in the, wherever, usually in the ass. And at least you hit it, but you didn't kill it. But I mean, this bird didn't chunk. I don't know what I was shooting at. I have no idea what I was shooting at. Apparently, I think I did the classics thing I've done my whole life. When I get that much visual on a bird, I'm looking at that tail feather. And that wind, that North Dakota wind, is literally bending that tail feather around like a windsock. And I think my eyes focus on that and go like, whoa, that's a big bird. That's last year's breeder bird. I don't know what goes in my head, but panic ensues. As soon as I miss the first shot, I might as well just not take the second one. But that's not always true. But I get every year of my life, I should chronologically write those down in my book because I've got some log books that go way back, and they're down in my house in Virginia, and I got to get them out of there. And I got to I used to keep 3 or 4 different log books, mostly because I use junk drawers. And one year I won't find it, so I'll get another log book from somewhere, and I'll put 2 years worth of hunting trip notes in there out of memory, and then I go to put it away, and then I find the other log book. But in all those log books, I've got my misses. I remember my misses and those classic misses. This was a classic miss. This was not a like, oh, that was a difficult shot. No. Anyway, so Eddie's hunting this tree row. Luckily, she didn't see that bird go away because she's not steady to a flying away bird. She would have chased it had she seen it. But the rest of that tree row, it was a long tree row, and the other tree row we came back on was even longer. And that dog stayed right in there with all them dead branches and that grass and just literally hunted up 20, 30 yards, turned around, came back. The only thing that went wrong, if there was a thing that went wrong with that trip, was that on that second tree row, we just didn't happen to have any birds. They just weren't there. And we didn't have another tree row to go to. So these birds were out in some big CRP field, the ones that blew out and the one I missed. But I saw her again. I'm like, wow, she just did good in the Sharpie Hills. Now she's hunting tree rows like she was raised on it, like a good lab flushing dog would do. That trip was such a, if nothing else made the trip a success dog wise. It was Itty and her performance in the field, and it wasn't about birds shot over her. It was about watching her and finally seeing what I saw only little snippets of, just snippets. Well, I had to take a little break there, and I needed a little. That's good. All right. So I should also talk about the new dog and why I didn't bring it. But I did, as I walked out to go get a little cigar in the truck. We called the dog Nick. My wife calls it Rufus. And now I want to call it Tagus. Okay? So I think its name should be one of those long names. Nick Rufus of Tagus. What do you think of that? Nick Rufus of Tagus. So, anyway, Nick Rufus of Tagus stayed back, like I told you in the beginning of the intro. And everybody's like, oh, take that dog out. Take that dog out. Well, sure, a good long trip, a lot of kennel manners, a lot of getting out and walking on a leash, peeing and pooping on a trip. Now, he's had a lot of that. When Allison brought him to Iowa and I brought him home from there, great in the kennel. Allison did a ton of work with him because I didn't get him until he was 12 weeks, so he had a lot of that travel down. But he's a young dog. And as long as I had the Hardy Hunters watching him, and I took old Bravo, I left my wife with an empty kennel. That doesn't usually happen. And I'll tell you what, that makes for a good hunting trip. When your wife doesn't have to walk 100 yards out to the kennel, let the dogs out 3 times a day, whether there's 1 or 6 of them, I tell you what, next time, make sure you leave an empty kennel when you leave on a trip. Anyway, his search is very, very much a puppy search. And had I not had these other 2 dogs to work with, Itty and Zara, I probably would have took them with and got them on a few walks. But in this area, we weren't hunting a lot of pheasants. We didn't have access to a lot of pheasant land. Now, later in the week, Tyler Webster, he took me and my guys up. Well, he took us so far north that Matt started getting texts on his phone, welcome to Canada. Seriously, he got like these welcome to Canada texts on his phone. I didn't get any, but anyway, Tyler took us up for pheasants one day, and I hunted the last day, which I'll tell you about at the end of the story, down south of an hour and a half south of me. So we weren't in pheasant country, so I'm like, what's the chances of getting this pup into a sharptail or a hun? Slim to none. I mean, we couldn't get older dogs into them, right? This is late in the year for prairie birds. And I thought, he will get more experience here on a couple little woodcock hunts or a grouse hunt where I can get him out. He doesn't exhaust himself. And it was one less dog to take care of at night. So that's why Roof didn't come with. Now, Roof. See, now I'm back to Roof. No, let's go. Nick Rufus of Tagus. I'm not going to be able to keep that up, am I? I also got to meet Nick's 2 sisters. Susan owns one of them, and Allison owns the other one. Now, those 2 dogs are already through their gun introduction. God bless them. They're making me look bad. These women trainers are making me look bad once again. And they've actually got their dogs into some pheasants, but they've got spots to go where they're like, okay, when you pheasant hunt in good pheasant country, you kind of know your spots. You know your little swales that there's at least going to be a hen in there. You just know it. I know a lot of you know what I'm saying, but you just know it. Or you'd have 2 or 3 spots like that when you hunt, and you're like, okay, I'll get that puppy out every time we stop the truck, and I'm going to let that puppy go over there because 1 out of 3 of these little spots is going to have a bird. That's just how pheasant country works, especially when the crops are down. It's one of the other fun reasons about pheasant hunting. You got targets. You don't just have 6 square miles to walk like when you're sharptail hunting. You've got targets. You've got swales. You've got waterways. You've got cattails, little grassy, weedy spots. That's what I love about it. But anyway, so I did not bring him because I didn't think I'd have enough time to get him into those kind of birds and situations, which I, in the long run, did not. And I was concentrating on Indian Zara. So there's the dog rundown. There's the dog rundown. I told you about my friends. It was just, like I said, it was a painless trip. Painless. And I know you've all been there, or the ones that travel with friends. You can get a little snarky by the end of the trip, you know. All right, I made breakfast. I did it. No, this was like a well-oiled machine that didn't hunt much. That's the truth. I mean, we hunted, but I don't consider sitting on a pond looking for ducks hunting. I consider that shooting. The effort goes into the prep, and in the end, doesn't go into the hunting part. You just got to sit there, be quiet, and be in the cattails. Anyway, I'll tell you real quick. Well, I'm going to go back to I don't know where I'm going to go with this one. Yeah, I'm going to go there. My hosts, Susan and Tom and Susan. I don't know how to thank you enough. I know one of you, I know Susan's listening to this, was, as you heard in this podcast, right there between my first trip to Tyndall, South Dakota, till now, almost 30 years later, best trip I ever had, and a lot of that was because of my host. I'm not going to go into the story. I'm not going to go into the address. This is not a lodge. This is just a person's home that was opened up to me through, well, okay, you know that tagline? A lot of you wrote me. You hear me say it every once in a while. In fact, I'm going to pull it up on my computer so I get it right. Oh, no, that's the George Bird Evans quote, when your dog dies. We don't want to read that one. There's no sad stuff going on here today. But on my website somewhere, it says something like, dogs and friends that I've known, dogs and friends that have passed on, and dogs and friends that I've yet to meet. Well, that held true, because I just added ones that I've yet to meet into the ones that I know, and their dogs and their home. When you do this long enough and you make the friends and you make the contacts, you can't have a bad trip. You just can't. It's impossible to have a bad trip. You could have bad weather. You could have North Dakota wind up your ass all day. But, I guess they get used to it out there. But I got to spend a day hunting with Sue and Tom. And I'll tell you what, at this point, you're going to be like, Ron, you absolutely did not try hunting. No, I absolutely was trying. I'm not saying I walked 10 miles a day. But I walked 4 or 5 miles a day on the days we walked. Some days we duck hunted. I had yet to shoot an upland bird, or shoot at, the one I missed. I take that back, the one I missed with both barrels. But I had yet to bag a bird. And I was not upset about it. We had a bunch of birds. Matt got himself a crane one morning. Hunter got all kinds of ducks. We went to Tyler's house to go visit and go on that trip that we thought the game warden was going to be replaced by, Royal Mounted Police. So before we even went on that trip, Tyler took Hunter and me and Matt out with Bo, and he said, I've been gone. I need to get these dogs out for exercise. And he said, grab a gun. And Hunter got to experience. I'm sure at this point Hunter is searching gundogbreeder.com or broker, whatever it is, looking for a bird dog, because he's a duck hunter, and they don't have a dog, or they've had labs before. But I think when Hunter got to shoot a pheasant over Bo, and I got to give Hunter credit. That pheasant comes screaming out of that cattails. Bo had pointed it on the corner, and the bird moved in further and deeper like roosters do. Roosters, they don't play by the rules. They're the nastiest, trickiest, cheatingest, lyingest bird out there, and that's why I love them. And I told Hunter, I said, get in there. Get in them cattails. Get in there. He didn't know. He'd never been there. He's got his duck gun with him. I think he's shooting Boss 3.5s, if I'm not mistaken, because that's what I gave him. And Bo goes back on point again, and I said, kick around in there. And Tyler was covering the right, and me and Matt were behind him. We weren't going to shoot, but, it might have been a chance where, if the bird got away. The bird didn't get it. That bird went down literally as quick as it got out of that cattails. That kid shot that bird, bam! I was like, in fact, I looked over at Tyler, who is known for being a quick shot. And I'm like, Tyler, did you shoot that? He looks at me, no. And Hunter's just in there waiting for Bo to bring the pheasant back. So this kid got his first wild pheasant, and I'm telling you what, that's another memory that will always stay in and that'll go in my logbook. Watching him shoot that one duck where I thought it was too high in the air, and then shooting this pheasant. But that little trip was with the guys. But I went out for, again, this is all going to, I have not knocked down a pheasant, sharptail, or hun to this point. Shot at one, missed it twice. Could have shot out some other ones. I didn't. There was other people there that could shoot. So, I'm not worried about getting birds. I was really worried about my dogs. And when I'm not hunting with my dogs, it's fine. Anyway, I get to go my last day all by myself. My whole crew has trickled out of the camp by now. And I get to go with Tom and Sue. Now, Tom and Sue have got me by a handful of years. Now, I just turned 64. And I don't know the exact date of birth of their years, but we weren't even in high school at the same time together, okay? And these two, I mean, even if my knee was good, I don't think I'd walk as much as they do. I'm telling you. And but I'd like to think I would. Maybe I'll get a second wind when I'm 70. Anyway, I went pheasant hunting with them, and this is what I love about pheasant hunting. You get out of the truck and you're like, okay, we're going to hit that swale. We're going to hit that waterway. Now there's a cattail slough back there. We're going to circle that, one around, one inside, one out. They're two dogs, Gus and Tracker. They know each other. They work well together because they hunt differently. And we had opportunities. I mean, trust me, we probably should have had, I don't know, anywhere from 5 to 7 birds, maybe 6 birds. Easily could say 6 birds, but we didn't. We had opportunities, of course, when you're wild pheasant hunting, especially after they've been chased another couple weeks or 3 weeks. A lot of the low-hanging fruit is gone, and there's a lot of hen points. The hen points, they desensitize you to the whole thing. Like the dog's on point, you're like, okay, here it is. Don't screw it up. Goes a hen, goes another hen, and then out comes a rooster, and everybody loses their gooster again. It's so much fun. Now, I've been in heavy pheasant areas where you get your birds quick, or even some wild spots where it's boom, boom, boom. There's just so many birds coming out. That's fun. But when you get these onesies and twosies, and you know the dogs are working the birds, and when there's no pointing going on, or the point moves and the point moves and the point moves, it's a rooster. You absolutely know. Hens are just not that tricky. And then you get to this end, you're pinching it down with 3 people and a dog, and there's no bird. No stinking bird. We're like, how? We pushed a bunch out of this last cattail slough into this smaller grassy area that had a little bit of cattails. This is our last piece right here. And I remember going, like, I don't pray, but I'm like, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great for the last, like pheasants will do, this particular piece, there was no more room for those pheasants to run if they played by any kind of rule book. I've rarely ever seen a pheasant. I've seen pheasants cross bare fields, but I've never seen them choose a bare field to walk out on, okay? And I am so ready at the last 40 yards of this thing because I'm thinking, like, anything that pops up is going to be a rooster. I'm ready to go. My thumb is on the safety, ready to click it and swing, and there's no birds. No birds. And I'm like, well, this is going to be the first trip of my life. And I wasn't sad about it. I told you why I went on this trip, and it was 100% success. No birds on this trip for Ron. And we turn around. We're all doing what we're not supposed to do. We quit, okay? And we had to walk back toward the truck. To do that, we had to cross a road. So this little grassy spot, little cattaily, little more grassy than cattaily. Those birds just did what fucking, I shouldn't have said it. Oh, who cares? Them rotten sons of bitchin' roosters will do. He probably went up to the end of that, snuck in between us, between the dogs, and it wasn't just one. There was 3 of them. and some hens. But the hens were back, the hens came out when we came back early, Anyway, I'm screwing that story up. There was 3 roosters that we knew should be in here. Could not find them with the wind in our favor. They doubled back through us. They went between the dogs. The dogs spent a lot of time in there. They were tracking, but we kept moving. The dogs kept hunting with us. We're on our way back, and we're just about to the road. Once we crossed the road, we got another maybe quarter, half mile to the truck. And rooster comes out. Nobody expects it. Rooster comes out. Nobody expects it. And then Tracker, an 8-year-old, I think it's 8-year-old. If it's not, it's 7 3/4. Susan's dog Tracker goes on point. And I think Tom said something to the effect was, yep, that's where the birds got up. And I've seen all kinds of dogs point where a bird freshly got up from. But, Tracker's pretty experienced. And Tracker, his nostrils are the only thing that are flaring. And I can look down. I'm like on a little bit of an edge of this grassy, swaley, cattaily thing I'm telling you about. So I got to step down about 2 feet to get level with the dog. But I can see him from an angle. I'm like, man, if he's pointing old bird scent, I got a feeling one of the two, I got a feeling there's a bird sitting on old bird scent. If that's old bird scent, I'll eat my hat. So I go stepping down into there a little bit. And, of course, that's all it takes to make it happen. And this rooster, who was a spurred rooster, you know what I mean by spurred? It wasn't this year's bird. He was that tricky. I mean, he eluded us several times and relied on his one last thing. He says, running's worked, hiding's worked, running between them's worked. He says, these people are leaving. They're all up on one side of the grass. In a small swale, a pheasant would literally know that he's got a hunter flanking left and right. Between their ears and their eyes, they know what maneuver to take. And I think this bird, this is my, what do you call it, anthropomorphization of a pheasant. I think this old cockbird said, look at that. They quit. All 3 of those stupid humans are walking together, talking and walking how we didn't find the bird. And then here comes Tracker. And I think that bird went, shit, where am I going to go? That bird took off like a jet, like a bottle rocket. And that's another thing about pheasants. I don't know the perspective of how fast a ruffed grouse flies in the woods because of the trees, and it's as explosive as it gets. I think sometimes, I think I should find some biologist with a timing light that we should figure out what bird flies the fastest on the flush. Probably is the ruffed grouse, probably. But a wild rooster, when it's escaped predators for at least 1.5 years of its life, when he flies out low, he's not wasting his ailerons, man. He's on all wing beats, and he flew out of that cattail just high as the edge of the road. And I swung, I shot, I bumped him, shot again, folded him, but not really. I folded him to the point where he bounced on the road like a hubcap falls off a truck, like boom, 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 boom. And he was gone. But luckily, we had 2 dogs in hot pursuit. And then Gus, we're telling him, dead bird, find the bird. And I'm like, oh, please find this bird. Please find this bird. Please find this bird. Not because I couldn't go home without any birds, but it would sure be good to have it last day, best day, birthday. And that's what happened. So Gus got that bird off on the side. I saw him. Of course, Gus didn't want to bring it to me, but that happens with a lot of dogs. They want to bring it to their owner. I can deal with that. And that bird had some spurs. That bird had some pointy, I won't call them, I'm not going to say they were 3.5-year-old spurs. Could be 2.5, but certainly was not a bird of the year. And he was a sneaky bastard. And his tactics were thwarted by a dog. It was not because of us 3, only because of a dog. And you're going to have those experiences as you travel, as you get older. Of course, a lot of my older friends, like Dave. Dave, who, did you think you were getting out of this, Dave? Did you really think? All right, let me back this story up. So Dave Hoops is a podcast listener, a patron of mine. He comes on the Zoom rooms. He's a little younger than me, but I'm a little handsomer. Maybe we're even on handsome. It's hard to say. Anyway, Dave was just leaving his hunting trip from Tyler's camp, and I was just getting into North Dakota, so we're going to go to breakfast. And I met Dave at breakfast. And now Dave's been a patron of mine for a long time and participant in the Zoom rooms, great guy. And I wanted to grab the check for breakfast. And Dave said, no. I said, Dave, that's not fair. You're a patron of the show. He's like, no, I got the check. I said, well, then I'm going to tell everybody that your dogs are in a truck. You've got stuffed animals all over the truck for your dogs. You got a pink bed. Your dog sleeps in a pink hand crocheted bed that your wife made for it, which is just embarrassing. And I will let the whole world know about what a softie you are and how, well, there was a lot of, anyway, Dave knows. Dave, thank you for breakfast. I really appreciate it. It was great to get to meet, again, a person who I've known through video, through writing, and then get to sit down and have breakfast with him. Dave and I did not get to hunt together, but it felt like we did. Yeah. A friend of mine wrote me, lastly, coming out of here, Randy Herline, my buddy, the wandering amputee. And I think it was a 2-word text. It said, getting limits with a question mark. And I said, yes, limits of memories. And that is literally what I got from this trip. Limits of memories. I reconnected with guys I knew. I met new people. I was with people I've known for years. I was with dogs that I haven't met, dogs that I've known. I mean, it was the last day, the best day, and it was my birthday. Yeah, so there. Happy birthday. 64 stinking years old. And if it wasn't for this right knee, I'd call you out on the carpet right now if you're feeling froggy. I'll meet you in the cage. Whoever you are. I'll take one good punch. I got one good roll. I got one good triangle choke left in me. I love you guys. I love you girls. Make your own adventures. Make your own stories. Make them happen. Take a trip. Write it down. Don't forget to write it down. There's a few trips I forgot to write things down, and those are just vague memories. Writing it down helps. Or start a podcast. So now my grandkids someday, when I'm long gone and, in the ground, they're going to hear this episode too. So, hey, maybe that's the way I should wrap it up. To my grandkids, Lawson, Ronnie, Lawson and Ronnie in Florida. And hang on a minute. My mic cord apparently I could hear it cutting out. So here's to my grandkids. Lawson, Ronnie, Lincoln, and Mara. You're all too little to understand this now, and someday I hope this is one of your favorite episodes, and I hope you're making your own memories. And I'll be watching you. And don't forget 2 things for you 4, and maybe another one down the road. When you get one of my shotguns, I want you to unscrew the butt plate. Now, I don't want you to gall it up with the wrong size screwdriver, but you've all got shotguns that I've designated that are going to go to you someday. Okay? I want you to take the butt plate off, or ask your dad or mom to, when you're old enough to shoot it and appreciate it, because there's going to be a little something in the stock. Okay? And for people who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I've done this with several guns. In fact, I've even sold a gun that I did this to and forgot about it. But I think it's kind of it's kind of like one of those geocache things, that kids go looking for. I take old hunting licenses from a trip, write a little something on there, maybe with a note. Sometimes it's just a license. I take the cap off the buttstock, and I slide it in there where the bolt holds the stock to the receiver, and I put the butt cap back on. And someday, one of my grandkids or somebody who bought that one Ruger of mine might take it off to refinish the stock, might try to tighten up the stock, and they're going to pull that out, and they're going to see who hunted with that gun and what state they hunted in. So there's a little tip for you. If you're in this for the long haul, put a few little mementos in the stock of that gun for somebody else. And the last thing I'm going to leave you with is what I'm getting my kids, or what my kids are getting me for Christmas. I talked about it before, and I'm going to talk about it a lot more. You know, I'm very passionate about the conservation organizations. I was that guy that really didn't put. I went to the banquets, and God knows I drank their beer and gave them lots of money for raffle tickets. But I wasn't into the habitat head. I was just into the banquet part of it. And so for my 3 daughters, they always ask, you know, what can we get you? Well, I don't need a whole lot of stuff for one. You know, everything besides my shoelaces I pretty much get from sponsors. And I said, I want you, and this comes from my buddy Roof, I want you, Kelsey, Jesse, Mackenzie, to buy yourselves a membership to RGS or PFQF or to any other organization that's got habitat and hunting as their forefront. I want you to buy yourself a membership to that, so that magazine goes to you every month or 2 months, and that's your gift to me. If you're going to spend it on me, I want you to spend it on that habitat organization. So for those of you who don't know what you want, the kids are going to get you a tie or a sweater. No, don't tell your daughter in Poughkeepsie. She goes, Dad, what do you want? Or Mom, what do you want? I don't know. I mean, I could get you another pair of leggings. No. You know what? Tell your kids, if they're old enough to where they just don't need to be buying you presents and they just buy you something to open up, tell your kids to buy themselves a membership to one of those habitat organizations, okay? Because they need your help more than you need a tie or a new pair of leggings. I love you guys. I love you girls. Can't wait to talk to you next week. Bye.